Hi friends, I'm Megan.
And my name is Jessie. Hey Megan, I really like your crown, but why are you wearing it?
I am wearing a crown today because today's Bible story is one of my favorites. It's about a brave queen named Esther.
Wait, there are kings and queens in the Bible?
Yes, Jessie, kings and queens.
That's amazing. I bet Queen Esther's crown made her so brave and she was never scared of anything.
Well, it wasn't a crown that made Queen Esther brave, Jessie. God heard Queen Esther's prayers for God's people, and he made her brave.
But why was she scared in the first place? If she's the queen, she should be able to do whatever she wants.
Well, there was a man who worked for the king, and he wanted to hurt God's people. Queen Esther had the chance to help rescue God's people, but the only way she could go talk to the king was if she was invited. Let's listen to our Bible story to see what happened. Some of God's people were in a land called Persia. Persia was ruled by King Ahasuerus. The king chose Esther to be his queen. Esther was one of God's people who were called Jews. Esther did not tell the king that she was a Jew. One day, Esther's cousin Mordecai heard some bad news. Haman, one of the king's helpers, had a very evil plan to destroy the Jews. Esther wanted to help her people, but the king had a rule. No one can go to the king unless the king asks that person to come first. If anyone broke the rule, the punishment was death. The only way to not be punished was if the king held out his scepter. That meant you may live. Esther was afraid. Mordecai reminded Esther that she was a Jew. Maybe Esther had become the queen just for this time, so she could save her people. Esther asked all the Jews to not eat or drink for 3 days. Then Esther went to the king. He saw Esther and held out his scepter. That meant she would live. "What can I do for you?" the king asked. "I will give you anything, up to half of the kingdom." Esther asked the king and Haman to come to a feast. When they were done eating, the king said, "What can I do for you? I will give you anything, up to half of the kingdom." Esther said, "Come to my feast tomorrow." The next day, the king and Haman went to Esther's feast. When they were done eating, the king said, "What can I do for you? I will give you anything, up to half of the kingdom." Esther said, "There is a plan to kill me and my people." "Who made that plan?" the king asked. "This evil man, Haman," Esther said. The king was angry. He ordered Haman to be taken away. Then the king made a law to keep the Jews safe from their enemies. God's plan was to send the Messiah into the world through Abraham's family. Haman's evil plan could not stop God. God had a plan for Esther to rescue his people. By saving the Jews, God made the way for his son Jesus to come into the world.
King Ahasuerus was the king of Persia. Many years earlier, when Cyrus was king, he sent some of God's people back to Judah to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. Another group of God's people stayed in Persia. God's people were called Jews because they were from Judah. The king of Persia chose Esther to be his queen. Shh! Esther didn't tell the king that she was a Jew. One day, Mordecai heard that Haman, an important leader that worked for the king, was planning to kill all the Jews. Mordecai was upset. He was a Jew. He didn't want all the people he loved to be killed. Mordecai and all the Jews cried. Esther didn't know what was wrong. She sent a messenger to ask Mordecai why all the Jews were upset. Mordecai told Esther about Haman's evil plan. "You have to do something," Mordecai said. "Ask the king to stop Haman. Ask him to save the Jewish people." Esther sent a message back to Mordecai. "No one can approach the king unless the king calls for that person first," Esther said. "The punishment is death. Unless the king holds out his scepter, then you may live." "You're a Jew," Mordecai said. "If you don't stop Haman, he will kill you too. Maybe this is why you are the queen." Maybe God put Esther in the palace to save her people. Esther asked Mordecai and the Jews to fast for 3 days. Then Esther would go to the king, even if it meant she might die. On the 3rd day, Esther went to the king. He saw Esther and held out his golden scepter. "What is it, Queen Esther?" the king asked. "What do you want to ask me? I'll give you anything, up to half of my kingdom." Esther said, "Would you and Haman come to a feast today?" So Haman and the king went to Esther's feast. After eating, the king said, "What do you want, Queen Esther? I'll give you anything, up to half of my kingdom." "Come to my feast tomorrow," Esther said. The king agreed. The next day, Haman and the king went to Esther's feast. After eating, the king said, "What do you want, Queen Esther? I'll give you anything, up to half of my kingdom." Esther spoke up. "There is a plan to kill me and my people." The king replied, "Who is responsible for this plan?" "This evil enemy, Haman," Esther said. The king was angry. He punished Haman and made a law to keep the Jewish people safe from their enemies. God was in control over Haman's evil plan to destroy the Jews. Like Haman, Satan wants to ruin God's plan and destroy believers. Satan thought he had won when Jesus died on the cross. But God raised Jesus from the dead and defeated Satan once and for all. All who believe in Jesus are rescued from sin and death.